they were not taken there because they were just white Irish. So I don't understand that argument at all.
The argument is that when you say America was built by white people, so therefore America was for white people, there were other white people that were excluded in the beginning of America, even though they were white, because they were the wrong kind of white.
Yeah, that's nationality.
So
That's
America's not for white people then.
it is.
So it's only for a specific kind of white people?
No, it's for white people in general.
Then why did
But
they
I'm saying
exclude
the
other
little
white
disputes-
people like white Irish people?
Hey, what's going on, man?
What's up?
Nothing much. I'm just watching your stream right now, and the topic actually interests me. I know that your last person you were having a debate with kind of went a little bit off, so I kind of want to stick to the white replacement theory.
Are you a believer?
Yes, I am.
You're a believer of the white replacement theory?
Yes, I am.
All right.
So, as you were saying, there's multiple different ways you can get into this theory. Of course, some people think the Jews did it, which seems to be the most popular one. Some people think that it's just passively happening.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I think it's a byproduct of globalism. So, to get things out of the way, I would consider myself a nationalist and anti-industrialist. So I would consider myself an open-minded person. I align with a lot of things from different sides, but if I were to consider myself anything, I would say I would lean more far right.
Okay, so
do.
let's just a couple questions for clarity.
Yeah.
I can understand if you're not a fan of globalism. It has its problems. It also has its benefits. I think that we are headed towards a more global economy. So, especially in regards to capitalism, that's most likely what will take place at some point or another. That's not something I'm too interested in getting like super hardcore talking about, though. We don't need to get all in the weeds with globalism. But when you call yourself like a nationalist or you say the white replacement theory, what do you mean exactly? Like, do you have a problem when there are more brown people in the country as opposed to white people?
Absolutely, yes, I do.
So you have an issue when there are more, if like white people became a minority.
Yes, I do.
So I mean, I'm not saying this ends the debate, but like I would consider that position to be a racist one.
Absolutely.
Would you just kind of bite that bullet, or do you disagree with that?
Yes, there's actually different ways you can look at it, right? So, let's look at it from this perspective. I guess we can all say colonialism is bad. Imposing your will on another people is, I would say, a bad position to take.
Okay.
Would you agree with me? So, yeah, so whites are historically are kind of mingled in, are kind of looped in as the colonialists and imperialists, and that's pretty much how I'm looking at it today. I kind of feel like other people who aren't similar to me are kind of coming in and taking everything that my ancestors have worked for. I like to look at it from a perspective that if, let's say, Ethiopia started to become a booming country, would they necessarily like it if a bunch of white people just moved in and kind of just started practicing their religion and kind of had their own culture?
Well, I don't know
I
what
don't
the
think they would.
laws are in Ethiopia, but over here in America, like we let people into the country and they're allowed to
Yeah,
practice their own religion.
absolutely, and I think that should be changed. That's my position on
But
this.
why? What does this do? What harm is this doing?
First of all, crime rates are way up. You don't see in any of these Scandinavian countries where it's more of a monoracial assimilation of violence, anything like this.
It's far more economic. In Scandinavia, for example, they have way stronger social safety nets, which is what I, as a social democrat, advocate for. This isn't because there's more white people there. It's not as if white people are somehow intrinsically less likely to commit crimes, whereas black people are intrinsically more likely to, or whatnot. I mean, if you want to look at it from a statistical lens, illegal immigrants commit less crimes than Native Americans. Not Native Americans as that, but natives in this country, people that are American citizens. So crime rates are an issue. I'm not denying that, but I don't know how that has anything to do with white
Yeah,
people
racial
becoming a
tension,
minority.
racial tension. You see it all over the news. Racial tension is high. Let's be honest. It's always been high. No one ever wants to live with the thought of being, hey, I have to compete with someone else, or hey, he has white privilege. Because at the end of the day, it's everyone is tense about the subject. I think you can agree on that, right?
I mean, yeah, but like white privilege
Are you
doesn't
going to
just
say that black culture is the same as white culture?
no, but I don't think that black culture is intrinsic to black people.
You don't. Well, that is true.
Okay, so then the cultural argument pretty much falls flat on its head, right?
No.
There's no okay, where I feel like we're jumping all over the place, so we should try to
Yeah,
go
let's.
let's
I
go
want to
one by
keep it.
one. So
Yeah.
the let's see. I'll write down your positions so far. So white people becoming a minority is bad for these reasons.
Mhm.
Crime rates, racial tension, and then what are some other reasons why? Why
Yeah, we were kind
else?
of bouncing around a little bit there. I want to stick to the main point. Uh, as a white person, I'm pretty sure you would know because you're white. You're, I don't know if your family's from ancestries has immigrated here, but um, this country was built by white people. Even the white immigrants, I don't have a problem with white immigrants. It's mostly those of a different race.
So America was built by white people.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And you can point to all the Asians we used to build railroads and the Chinese and the Japanese and stuff like that. But it was spearheaded by white peoples.
All right, what else? Are those the three top reasons?
Yeah. And
Okay.
also, I'm sure I could go a lot more on about this, but you're way more seasoned debater than I am, and I am very much envious of you. So this is kind of my first time. So
Yeah, sure. I mean, if there's any other things you want to kind of throw up here on the board, we can then go through them point
yeah,
by
so I
point.
also want to talk about radicalization and how it did happen to the shooter because I did read his manifesto. I did think it was pretty shit the way he wrote. Um, it I don't
Uh-huh.
think it had any. I think he rubbed two brain cells together and pretty much wrote that thing. It was kind of meaningless. I feel like this kid was just it's a bad perspective to look at it, but a victim of internet culture.
Well, let's start with
Um,
the radicalization one then,
mhm.
because I think that that's
Because
going to play a role with the
I
rest of
can
them.
relate to him heavily, and not in
So,
the sense that I would ever do anything that he would do, God forbid. It's just that the way that he describes that how it happened to him is very similar with a lot of people.
mhm.
Um, and I would just like to provide some insight on that as well
Well, I
as
think it's
debate about it.
similar because a lot of people are pushing, honestly, falsehoods about this great replacement thing. There are multiple issues here, which is first of all, are demographics changing? Yeah, absolutely. But are they being changed deliberately in some deliberate attempt to make white people the minority? I don't know, and I don't think so. So, what do you mean by radicalization? Radical on what position exactly?
Okay, so um, yeah, so like we were saying, so the argument that the Jews are I'm sorry, I'm getting a little off track here. That the Jews are making the great white replacement theory. I don't believe in that. I think it's just a byproduct of globalism. But I
Okay.
do, but I'm not here to advocate and use your platform to advocate for it. I just want to discuss it. And obviously, I don't know if you had any other people on your stream say it wasn't the Jews caused it and all that, but I can I can see myself becoming a believer of that, but I don't see there's not many points in favor for it. But I kind of align more with Tucker's view that it is a thing and it probably is inevitable, and that as
Well,
a white person,
to be
if you
clear,
do,
Tucker's position is not just like, hey, demographics are starting to shift, lol. It's that there is an intentional attempt by the Democrats to flood the country with new voters,
Mhm.
and in the process, basically replace white people or replace legacy Americans, which You probably agree with that since you also think America was
Yes,
built by white
absolutely.
people, but
Hmm.
that's wrong on a number of ways. Is first of all, America does not only exist for white people. I'm sorry, like it doesn't. And even if I were
Well,
to,
not anymore.
no, even if America was built by white people, that does not mean America only existed for white people. I think there's a pretty good argument that slaves did a pretty big role in building certain
Yeah,
aspects of
slavery was
America.
bad.
Yeah,
That
so,
they never should have brought him here.
but that's also not white people that built the country,
Yeah,
right?
but it was organized by them.
Okay, but just if it's organized by them doesn't mean that it was built only for them. Just like people were, or the founding fathers of America were religious, they were theists, some of them were Christian, right? But
Hmm.
the country was not made only for Christians.
You're absolutely right. There was different religions, different sects, but they were all predominantly white. That doesn't change the
So is
fact
the
that they were
country
white.
supposed to be a Christian country?
Um, so that's a different question,
No, it's not.
right?
It's no, no, no. It's
Yeah,
directly
that
analogous.
is.
It's no, no, no. Just answer. What do you
Is
think? Is it supposed to be a Christian country?
I believe yes, it is
Okay.
because
So you think the country was supposed to be exactly
uh,
like the founding fathers were, like whatever they
no, they're
believed, that should have been
different.
how the country
Their
was?
their version of Christianity is very different. There's a bunch of different views on Christianity. The founding fathers believed that God did exist, but he didn't have any active role on humans. That he kind of just created everything and went away. There's a bunch of different sects and everything. Obviously, you got Lutheranism, but I'm just saying that those were all created by white people.
But hold on, you're confusing
Just
yourself.
like white people have different nationalities doesn't mean they're all the
No, no, no. It's
all
I'm
gonna.
not disputing that the claim that America was organized by white people, that the people who wrote the Constitution were white. I'm not
They were.
denying it. I know, I'm not denying that.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is, and where you are mistaken, is that just if the country was quote unquote built by white people does not mean that the country only was designed to exist for white people.
Well, it wasn't. They had to make amendments, obviously,
So
because
so
things
you know then
changed.
that the country
You can
wasn't
change
made
the.
for white people then. Just built by white people doesn't mean the country was made for white people.
Well, no, it was changed, but in the process of amending the Constitution, and that was never the intention. I mean, the intention was you can add amendments, but they never saw it as using adding more rights for other people. I mean, I guess you can say all men were created equal, but it was still a controversial thing to add. If in the Constitution that if slaves should have rights, because they knew it was going to become a
Well, it
problem,
wasn't
like
just
you were
slaves
saying.
though. Like they were rather exclusionary at first with other white people as well. Italians were kind of not even considered white at first, where now of course they are. So this idea that because America was built by white people means it was only meant for white people is not
Well, there's an
true.
argument to the Italians, Southern Italian and Northern Italian.
Well, hold on.
Obviously,
I'm
there's
trying to get to the bottom of your claim here.
Mhm.
America was built by white people. You and I agree with this. We are on the same page.
Yes.
However, being built by white people does not mean it is a country that only exists for white people. Yes or no?
It was originally intended to be the way,
It
but
was
it's
intended to
changed. It's
only
been
be for white people. That's what you're telling me? Where do you see this? What's your source for this?
I'm sure the founding fathers were ecstatic to know in a couple of hundred years that they're going to have a bunch of immigrants and non-whites move in.
That doesn't matter.
That it
What
does
matters is there's nothing in the founding issue or the founding documents of America that say that it was only meant for white people. And even if
because
there
there was
were, I
no
would be
other
against
people
that.
besides white
Hold on.
people. White people.
Hold on.
There was no. If there was an actual small minority, they would be like, "Oh, well, only white people have rights and black people don't." The thing was, there was no. The
This is the
minority was
equivalent
such
to
a
me
small.
saying like, "Hey, a white dude built a pickup truck, so pickup trucks are for white people only." That's like what you're saying right now.
That's straw man argument.
It is not a straw man. It's
That
directly
absolutely
analogous to what
is.
you're saying. There's no actual American founding document or
Because there's
anything.
no black people to reference
There
that
was
to.
there were
There was
slaves. There were slaves,
they
right?
were such a small minority
And
that it
even
was minuscule.
no, even when it
And
came
they were
to
considered
other white
slaves.
people
They
like
weren't even
Irish,
considered.
they were called white N-words. So the country was not actually originally built for white people,
White
especially
I
not the way that we understand white people nowadays. Some have argued that America was originally created for Anglo-Saxons, which is a ethnicity that doesn't exist anymore, and also, if you looked into it, was far more cultural than ethnic. There was an Anglo-Saxon culture. It was not white people only, because again, when white people tried to come to America, they were excluded because they weren't considered the right kind of white.
Yeah, but I'm gonna circle back to the thing when you said about white Irishes. First of all, there was no what the slaves from Ireland were only slaves for Ireland because they were either A, in prison, or B, had to pay off a debt. They were not taken there because they were just white Irish. So I don't understand that argument at all.
The argument is that when you say America was built by white people, so therefore America was for white people, there were
Mhm.
other white people that were excluded in the beginning of America, even though they were white, because they were the wrong kind of white.
Yeah, that's nationality.
So
That's
America's not for white people then.
it is.
So it's only for a specific kind of white people?
No, it's for white people in general.
Then why did
But
they
I'm saying
exclude
the
other
little
white
disputes
people like white Irish people?
because back then minorities were different. The concept of minority back then was you'd have to agree is a lot different than it would mean today when you
No,
have
you're
almost
you're
yes it
proving you're
is.
literally debunking your own point right now, my dude. You're saying that they weren't considered white because they were a minority. What that follows then is that America, when it was first built, you're saying was for white people, but they were exclusionary towards other white people. So you cannot say that America was only for white people. If anything, you could say maybe America was built with the intention to only be for a certain kind of white people, an Anglo-Saxon, which again is an ethnicity that doesn't exist anymore. And I'm pretty sure none of us would fit that definition. So how is America for white people if the original founding fathers in America or whatever were exclusionary towards other white people?
Where were they exclusionary towards other white people? Obviously, there's different colonies and different cultures made by different types of white people. But I'm saying white people as a whole, it's that's I don't think that's where we kind of merge off there. Because I think you're trying to say is that why would it be built for white people if other colonies or other groups of white people, whoever believed in a certain uh, culture or nationality, would impose their will on other white people? It just makes no sense. And I can see where you're coming from, but I'm saying, and I'm looking at it from a more general perspective, that white people are going to be more similar even though there was discrimination. White people are going to be a more similar majority than compared to races of other colors. And it was
So
more
what you're saying
they're
then is
different.
that
They,
America was not necessarily built for the white people that we understand as being white today because you still want to be in America.
I'm sorry, repeat that.
You're basically trying to weasel your way out of like, well, you see, it was made for white people, but only a specific kind of white people, which now means any white person. You can't you can't do that. It sounds like what you're saying is since you're white, but you don't know how white you are, you don't know exactly what part of
Hmm.
white you are. You don't know if you're Anglo-Saxon. You have to fit the definition though, because you want to be a American. So
Hmm.
America was built for you because you're quote unquote white, even though you don't know where exactly you fall in this white spectrum. You're you're making a bunch of excuses to essentially I don't even know. Like if you cannot tell me that America was built by white people, therefore it was for white people, and then say that well the reason they excluded some white people was because they did
Then
weren't.
why were no if then why were black people considered to be one third of a person then? If at the same time, like you're claiming, they were also discriminating against other white people. I think that's
Yes.
a very, yes, exactly. That is a very different, that is discriminatory on a whole new level than against other people against other white people. So I
I don't know what you're.
I don't see your point. I'm saying your claim is that white people were also discriminatory against other white people. So then, therefore, a certain particular group of white people doesn't make it the whole general aspect of white people today. But there is evidence because they considered black people one third of of a person. Therefore, that is a very sturdy grounds to make an argument that um, that it was built for white people.
No. So I'm reading this right here. In the 1950s,
Mhm.
the United States of America was not yet a country, but its trouble with immigrants had already begun. People of non-WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant descent were crossing the ocean to start new lives in the New World. In writings from that decade, Ben Franklin, shared his concerns about the Germans. They weren't as smart as the people already living in the colonies. Not being used to liberty, they know not how to make a modest use of it. They were endangering New England's whiteness. The Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also, the Saxons only excepted. You brought up the Scandinavian thing at the beginning of this conversation to say, look, Scandinavian is actually doing really well because more white people. Those types of people were not even necessarily considered white when America was first starting out. So it's just the reason this falls flat on its head is because if you say that America was made for white people, but the history shows that the type of white people they were talking about was only a very specific kind, which was Anglo-Saxon, then you cannot say that America was actually made for white people. It was made for Anglo-Saxons, and none of us are Anglo-Saxons anymore because
Exactly.
America's changed.
So that's why the term white is a more general aspect now. It's the definition has changed over time. Assimilation is a thing.
But how does this follow then that
Because what I
America
can
should only
say,
be full of white people now?
because regardless, they were all from Europe. They all
Dude, Benjamin Franklin said the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion. Even Germans. The whole
that's
thing that
xenophobia. That's xenophobia. That is not racism.
it doesn't have to be racism. That's not what we're talking about. We're trying to get through the first
We are.
point.
We're talking about races.
No, we're
He's
talking
talking
about
about
the first
xenophobia.
point,
That's
which was that
nationality.
America was built by white people, therefore it was for white people. This is not held up by the history of America. Should everybody in America be deported unless they are of Anglo-Saxon descent?
No.
Okay.
But you're
So then there's
listen,
no
it's
argument
been
here.
there is, but it's been centuries and you're taking terms and you're switching them and not using them in modern context. There's
Modern
a
context at the time was not white people. There was no understanding of white people back in this time. So you can't, what you're doing is you're taking a modern understanding of white people and saying, yeah, that's what America's meant for. It's meant for white people. It's not. It wasn't. It never was supposed to be.
so Anglo-Saxons aren't white.
Anglo-Saxons might be white, but they are a very specific type of white.
But they
Other
wouldn't
white people that we
themselves
consider,
as a
hold on, other people that we consider white nowadays, like me, are not actually white according to Anglo-Saxons, or according to the way that they were classifying white people or Anglo-Saxons at that time.
that's xenophobia. That is not racism.
It doesn't have to be racism. Stop.
It does because we're talking about race.
Stop. No.
We're talking
No. You are saying America was built by white people. Therefore, it's for white people.
Yes.
Okay. White, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that white is a race. Isn't there varying different types of ethnicities that play a role in where you are from, how you got white? Are you from Europe? Are you from Russia? Are you from, doesn't that play a role as well?
Absolutely. Like Slavs, Anglo-Saxons. Absolutely. There's different I'm talking about white people as a general uh like including Slavs
Okay.
and I'm talking about it as a more general aspect.
Okay, so you realize then that your understanding of white people was not the understanding of white people when America was founded? So you are taking a modern understanding of white people and applying it to the historical founding of America to try and say that America was meant for white people when it wasn't. White people refers to anybody who looks the color white. At the time, America was only for Anglo-Saxons. They wouldn't consider Germans white. Italians were not considered white. Irish were not considered white. So America was not built for quote unquote white people.
Yeah, I think that's where we're gonna have to disagree there, and I don't think we'll. I think I'm hell bent on my view, and you are on yours. So I don't think there's any way you can convince me. But I will say, Hunter, your points are very good, and you are a really good debater, and I envy you. But I think we kind of hit a brick wall here, and I think
Okay.
we're gonna have to end it here. But you're very skilled.
Well, I
Thank you for
appreciate it,
having me
man.
on.
I definitely hope that, you'll reconsider this.
I
And
I, I will not, but I'm going to tell you that you are a good debater.
well, thanks. I appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Yep. Take care, man.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you get notified when I drop a new video.